Okay, welcome to part one of this tutorial on composing orchestral music with sound libraries and MIDI. To begin with, let me just, you probably noticed that by now, but I want to apologize for my English. This is not my native language. I speak Spanish, but I consider that if I do this in English, even if my English is not like the best one, um, it's going to be better for more people to be able to watch this video and maybe learn something. So on this part one, which is probably going to be really short, I'm going to speak a little bit about the environment that I use and some tips and tricks on how to set up your workflow that are maybe good for you. And so let's begin. I use Cubase. This is my preferred digital audio workstation. However, everything that I'm going to explain here applies to any DAW. So it really goes down to your personal preference. I prefer the way Cubase deals with MIDI and multi-timbric or multi-timbral synthesizers. I'm going to explain a little bit of this later. But yeah, you can either use Logic, Cubase, Ableton Live, whatever. Any professional workstation is going to work. So for this tutorial, actually not for this tutorial, for usually every composition that I start when it comes to orchestral, cinematic, or score music, I have this template that I created myself. It's really a pretty basic template that you can create on any workstation that you use. The point for this template is to waste less time, because usually when you sit down, you just want to write music. You don't want to be loading instruments and stuff like that. So for this tutorial, and actually usually for most of the things that I do, I am using a few libraries that are the ones I prefer. However, you can use whatever library you have or you like. In my case, I am using, for the strings part, I'm using this stuff from 8dio, Adagio strings. And for the piano, I'm using one of my preferred piano libraries, which is the Piano in Blue from Cine Samples. I really like the sound of this piano. I'm going to speak a little more about that later. And then, other than that, I have a very basic setup here, which is every part of the string section has its own output on the mixer, as you can see here. I have two groups, one for the sustains, one from the shorts. Then I have this feature is I think it's only in Cubase, but in other workstations you can like have buses. Like this allows me to control the level for a specific part of the mix. So this is very handy when you just want to put emphasis on some part of the track. You just kind of like have all the shorts go higher in level at the same time and whatever. And then for the reverbs, I'm using for this tutorial this stuff that comes with Cubase. This is a very basic algorithmic reverb. This is the one that I use to give instruments what I call the environment. I think Steinberg calls this the ambience. It's pretty much the same. I'm going to speak more about that later. And for the whole or long reverb, I'm using convolution reverb. This is again something that comes with Cubase. This is Reverence, and I'm using this preset that we are probably going to tweak a little bit later. It's just a really nice whole, really warm. So yeah, that's the basic setup. Another thing that I want to explain about the setup that I'm using here is that it's really a matter of not wasting time. So you don't want, when you have an idea, you don't want to sit and have to load stuff. So what I have here is, for example, in this instance of Contact, I have all the sections preloaded, like the violins, the violas, the cellos, and the basses. However, if you pay attention, you're going to see that there are no microphones loaded. So this is using absolutely no RAM. Nothing is being loaded until the moment that I click on any microphone. So at that moment, you can see that the samples are loading. But so far, this allows you to open the template really, really quick without wasting time. So for example, if I am going to use, I decide to use the short notes for the violins, I just enable the microphone that I want to use here, in this case, the close microphone, and I just play. So that is the idea for the template. Okay, so now a little bit of explanation on the setup for the reverb stuff and stuff like that. Usually I start, when I start writing music, I start with what I call dry sounds, like close microphone position, and I might decide later that I want to use a different microphone position. The library that you might be using might not have different microphone positions. This really depends on the library that you're using, or the sampler, or whatever. However, I find that, at least for myself, it's easier to start with a dry sound, and then if later I decide that I want to give some kind of more roomish sound, I can just use the ambience microphones. However, most of the times I use the closed microphones, and if I want to give some kind of ambience, I give it with reverb. About the reverb setup that I have, this is how it sounds. This is the sound completely dry, coming from the Adagio library. And as you can see, in the case, in this specific library, is not completely dry. Like, the closed microphones still have some kind of ambience, some kind of room that you can hear really clearly here. However, is really subtle. So usually, what I usually do is I give it a little bit of the ambience reverb. Again, there is no mathematical equation for this. You have to use your ears until you can feel that is the right amount. And of course, it depends on the kind of composition that you're doing. Like, for something really sad or mellow or romantic, it's going to be probably a really long reverb and whatever. And maybe for something more epic, like is going to be a more short and really upfront sound. So this is really a matter of common sense. And again, after I have this kind of roomish sound that I like, I might have to add some kind of reverb for the whole, or the long reverb, whatever you want to call it. Okay, right now I think this is too much, so this is, again, use your ears to the point that you like it the most. Okay, and going back to the workflow, this is pretty much all I have. What I have on this template is usually the things that I'm going to use most of the time, and of course we are going to be adding tracks if we need them. About the piano, this is the piano library that I like. The reason why I like this piano library is because the samples are really, really high quality, and it has this vintage sound. I don't know if it's the gear they used to record the piano. I don't know if there is the processing that they did to the library, but to my ears, this piano sounds really beautiful. Again, as you can hear, this is a really dry sound. So again, we are going to just probably give this piano a little bit of whole reverb. This is again the convolution reverb. I'm not really happy with the EQ of this reverb so far. We're going to tweak that later. As you can see, the low end of the reverb is like too boomish. I don't know how to define it. So it's like interfering with the main sound. We need to deal with that later. And again, so this is the basic setup that I am going to be using for all this tutorial. Another thing that for me is really, really important, especially when dealing with the strings libraries, like let me just load a sustain preset here, just to show you what I want to explain here. Let's just load the violas because we have a better range here. So if you pay attention here, this dynamics control is mapped to MIDI controller 1 or CC1, which is a modulation wheel on your keyboard. And the keyboard that I am using is a Novation 61SL. And this keyboard has a feature that allows you to disconnect the spring on the modulation wheel. So that pretty much means that if I just remove my hand from the modulation wheel, like I did now, you cannot see it, but I don't have my hand there, the modulation wheel is going to stay wherever you left it. So it's not going back to the 0 position. For me, that's very useful when dealing with strings. A lot of keyboards, especially from Roland or other manufacturers, I think Korg uses also a spring modulation wheel, will not let you do that. On this keyboard, on the Novation 61SL, you have a switch on the back of the keyboard that allows you to connect or disconnect the spring. So that allows you to like do this. And then you can just remove your hand from the modulation wheel. And then you go back. So it's very handy for me because on these string libraries, you're going to be using a lot of times you're going to be using the modulation wheel to give the sounded dynamic content, like, you know, to play louder or softer. And it's not really just about hitting the keyboard softer or louder. It's also about being able to control this after you pressed the key. So, for example, that is going to give you a lot of control regarding how you put the emotion on your composition. And another thing that usually is really ignored by beginners, it was ignored by me many time ago, is the importance of two things. One thing is EQ, and another thing is reverb, especially when you deal with orchestral music. If you pay attention, and this is something that is kind of hard to explain because I think it's just a matter of getting used to hear what you need to hear. But if you pay attention to this sound, at least for the kind of romantic, melodramatic song that I am planning to for this tutorial, we need a softer sound. We need to remove certain frequencies that we don't really want there. And the way to do that is by using your ears. Don't let the spectrum analyzer confuse you, because that is not really what you want. What I usually do is I take a band, I move it really, really high, and then I try to figure out what is the part that I don't like. And that's it. So after I spot the frequency that is bothering me, I just bring it down a little bit until I like the sound. And I'm going to cut the bass from this, because we are not really going to use the bass on the violas, and that can give you like bow noises and stuff that you don't really want there. And after you have the sound the way you want it, you really need to start dealing with the reverb part and giving the sound some kind of ambience. Okay, sounds nice for me. Okay, so this is the end of the part one. The idea was to show a little bit of the workflow, what instruments I am using, and what I am, and what is the way that I usually work. By the way, on part two, I'm going to start composing a track. This is going to be just live. I'm going to start improvising something, so it could work, it could not work, we will see. But this is pretty much the way that I usually work. I just sit, and sometimes music comes and sometimes it doesn't. So let's hope that this time I can give you something at least minimally decent. So see you in the next part.